everyone, and welcome back to X the Stress. Today we are speaking to somebody different. As you know, up until this point in the campaign, we've been looking at the benefits of exercise and physical activity for mental wellness, but we've been also looking at other aspects of mental wellness. And today we're speaking to Theoniel McDonald, who's Head of Financial Planning at Wealth Associates. Theoniel wrote a fascinating piece on MoneyWeb in October last year for the launch of Mental Health Month. And I managed to hook Theoniel into coming to chat to us about this because he was talking about the role of financial planning and financial wealth in mental health, which I think is fantastic. So Theoniel, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thanks,
and
Gwen.
I'm absolutely fascinated to hear what you're going to tell us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Gwen. And I mean, obviously, having been following your journey closely the last couple of months, every time we talk, I just realize there's so much overlap in mental wellness and fitness, and my journey along the financial planning side with mental wellness. And I'm really excited in this conversation to explore what these are and to see, hopefully, the listeners can benefit from that.
Great, absolutely. So let's just start with where are those overlaps? Because we tend to think of health, physical health, and mental health as very distinct from financial planning and financial affairs. But I suppose they have a lot of interactions between them.
So I think the starting point is if you are struggling with financial management, it leads to stress and anxiety. It keeps you up at night. It has an impact in your relationships. It has an impact in your work. It basically has an impact in every aspect of your life. So I think from that perspective, there's lots of overlap. It's really interesting to see how small changes in your financial management actually has a marked improvement in your mental wellness score. So from that perspective, I think there's lots of overlap.
So it's not necessarily just a case of people that suffer from poor mental health have poor financial planning. It actually works the other way around as well.
So as a recent study, a longitudinal study done in Australia over the last 20 years, where they've actually proved the exact opposite. So one would think that poor mental health leads to poor financial decisions and ultimately to financial stress. But they've actually shown the opposite. They've actually shown that small financial mistakes you make or poor financial decisions lead to stress, lead to anxiety, and ultimately lead to financial pressure. Everybody's heard the phrase that money doesn't buy happiness, which is only partially true. Money does buy some happiness, but research has shown that it actually plateaus at about 110,000 Rand a month, then it doesn't buy you any more happiness. So we all know lack of money adds to stress. The key to that point is actually that certain things sit within your control, and you can control the environment around that. For example, yes, more money would help until a certain point, but then it's all about financial management from there onwards, because depending on, if you earn double that, it's very likely that your expenses will also be, and your lifestyle will also be adjusted in that space. And the big mistake that people make is they think that it's only people that don't earn a lot of money that sit with financial pressure, where it's the 100% opposite that's true, where everybody, professionals, you can go through the whole list of professionals. What we've seen is people, doesn't matter how much they earn, it's more about how they manage what they earn that ultimately releases the pressure and the financial stress.
So what can we do? What are the practical approaches to having better financial planning?
It all starts with action. It's like getting up in the morning before 5 to take that jog when it's raining in the morning, and it's about being quite specific in terms of the things that you want to approach. So I think people tend to think this is not for me, or people are scared to talk because they are worried that they are different or they are being seen as unsuccessful. But the reality of the fact is we are all struggling with the same things. We are all struggling with the same things around all the expenses, all the living costs that are carrying up, the school fees and the bonds and so on and so forth. So the reality is you have to start somewhere. And it's also amazing how that's shown, and I think it also ties back nicely to what one of your other presenters spoke about, is how getting out there and doing that run already has a massive impact, a massive immediate impact. And I think when it comes to financial management, it's exactly the same. So the first impact is when you actually realize where you are, where you take note of where you are, and something as silly as writing down your expenses and tying it up to your income, starting your budget. So it starts with getting out of the blocks and taking that first step and taking accountability.
And then? I want it all.
Okay, so obviously that's only the start of the whole process, but the magic happens when, like exercise, it's like following a healthy diet. It's it's like looking after your body. It's like all of those type of things. It's starting somewhere and having a plan, but then the real work starts by adding the perseverance and the discipline and the consistency. And then you make those small deposits in your future. You make those small deposits on a daily or a monthly basis, and that compounds over time. If we can refer to Warren Buffett as an example, very few people realize that he accumulated more than 90% of his wealth after the age of 65. Oh, wow. And that just proves the impact of compounding. And look, this is not an investment conversation, so I'm not going to talk about compounding from an investment perspective, but compounding from making good money decisions over time, it has the exact same impact. So, so if you look at where it all starts, referring back to the Australian study where they actually tied it to your spending habits. They tied it to your ability to make your debt payments. Let's say a 1% increase in your ability to make your debt payments has about a 0.5% increase in your mental wellness score. And the same thing with savings. With every 1% of savings towards emergencies will have also about 0.5% impact in your mental wellness score. Now these are small margins, but 1% is also a small margin. So the reality is you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere, and the quick fix is, yes, financial management. The quickest way to make a meaningful impact in your mental wellness is to start. But the magic happens when you continue doing this over many years time.
And I suppose it's sort of a dual thing, that on the one hand you've got the typical compounding, a mathematical model that your money that you're saving or your debt that you're chipping away at is compounding over time. But I suppose the discipline also compounds over time. That last week or last month you had the discipline to put away an extra 0.5%. Maybe this month you'll have the discipline to put away another 0.5% over and above that. So it's a psychological compounding as well as a purely financial compounding.
100%, and that once again, it ties in so nicely to exercise, to following a good diet, to looking after your body. It's when you start seeing the impact, it becomes easier. It becomes habit, and the more it becomes habit, the more you get motivated to continue with those good habits. And that's what I mean when I say those good habits are ultimately small deposits in your future self. And it's making those sacrifices now that will benefit you sometime in the future.
It makes absolute sense, but I think for the reality for a lot of South Africans now, people are struggling, overwhelmed with debt. Cost of living is going through the roof. It's very easy to feel totally overwhelmed to the point that you can't get out of the starting blocks.
Yes, so I think from a South African perspective, it would be so interesting to see that study from a South African perspective, because I have no doubt that the impact would be much bigger. I mean, from a South African perspective, 70% of South Africans in the last year had to borrow money to make monthly expenses, to pay groceries. It's only about, I think, 6% of South Africans can retire completely financially independent. And of those, 80% can't afford to continue with their same lifestyle into retirement. So those are scary numbers. But to add to that, from a South African perspective, we're sitting with an incredible volatile currency. Currently it's not looking bad, and everybody following the rand would very likely think the opposite because it's strengthening nicely. But the reality is it's incredibly volatile. That has an impact. We have high interest rates compared to other developing countries. We all felt it in our basic grocery bill. If you look at what you're spending in groceries over the last year or two compared to 3 or 4 years ago, we feel it in our pockets. And how does this compare against the first world country like Australia or America or the UK? And you can mention them all, where they all have incredibly, much better support systems in place. So we don't have that support system. So our support is really dependent on our ability to manage our money well. So we don't have that safety net. And once again, that is why this is such an important conversation. There's a couple of things from a financial planning perspective that are really important. So you have 6 main components, and financial management is one of those components. And financial management includes things like budgets and cash flow and managing your debt. And I think the biggest tip I can give anyone with regards to those basic things is automate things. Do the budget so that you can see the picture. And often that picture is not what you want to see. And many of us will look at that picture and see we're spending more than we're earning. But at least then you know the reality, and you can start working on that reality, and you can start working on that budget. Look at the true debt position. See exactly how much you're paying in unsecured debt, credit cards, overdrafts, clothing accounts, it's personal loans, all those unsecured debt. Very important to take note of all those things. Obviously, it doesn't sit in everyone's means to buy a house cash or a car cash. So we will have some level of debt, but there's a big difference between unsecured debt and secured debt, where it's secured by an asset like a property or a car or whatever the case may be. So I think first take accountability, look at the budget, those type of things, set up automatic payments to make sure that you have a plan to settle that debt. Now, nobody has the luxury of coming and paying all your debt at once, but when you have a plan, you should know how long it's going to take you to settle that debt, and then you should make a very direct decision to not end up in that same position. Because what typically happens is you are under this tremendous stress financially because of the debt. Then you focus all your attention to bring the debt down, and the moment you can start breathing, then you're looking for that next dopamine fix, and you go out and you buy something that you shouldn't have bought because you haven't saved for it, and you're buying it on debt, and the cycle just continues. So make sure you have a plan, a debt management plan in place. And then lastly, that emergency fund. So that emergency fund is so underrated. People don't realize how much peace of mind it actually gives you to have 3 to 6 months of income or expenses saved in an account that you can easily access to cover for the unforeseen. And so just from a pure financial management point of view, those are the most important things to consider. So obviously, those are also the things that can make a really quick impact in your mental wellness. But then there are other things that are equally important, is your risk management, to make sure that you are providing for your dependents, covering your debt, should the unforeseen happen, pass away, disability, any of those type of things. So that all ties into risk management. Then you've got retirement planning. You need to have some sort of a plan. We are all going to retire one day, and we need to have some sort of a plan towards that retirement. So you need to have that retirement plan. Then you need to have an investment plan. You need to understand how much of what are you actually investing in. How much equity do you have in your portfolio? Property, bonds, cash. How much offshore exposure you have in your portfolio? So those are also really important things to consider. Then you need to think about estate planning. Do you have your will in place? Are you sure that one day that your assets will transfer as easily and cheaply as possible and actually get to your dependents or beneficiaries in leaving a legacy? And then lastly, it's that golden thread. Nobody wants to pay unnecessary taxes. So tax is sort of the golden thread when it comes to good financial planning, which includes all those components.
So when you say it, it all sounds so reasonable and so obvious. But for financial dunces like myself, how are there people that you can get to walk this path with you?
Gwen, so yes, there are people. That's a good news. There are lots of people that can help you. There are really great financial planners out there, and I think there is always a little bit of a stigma in the industry, and people are worried that they're going to be sold to and end up with products that they don't need. The reality is there are many really fantastic financial planners out there that focus on financial planning and not on product sales. And and so what a really good financial planner would typically do is they will become your accountability partner. They will help you define these goals, and they will help you keep yourself accountable to achieving those goals. And also the reality is it's not static. Things change, legislation change, tax laws change, immigration laws change. So you need somebody that will help you determine those goals, set those clear goals. Then you need somebody to help you to keep yourself accountable to achieve those goals. And then you need somebody to say, listen, things have changed. We need to make decisions. We need to juggle things around to make sure we still get to that goals of yours at the end of the day. And that's why I really believe that it's going at it alone is very difficult. There are people that get it right. There are people that get it right very well. But unfortunately, what I've seen is we are all professionals in our careers, and it's so difficult for someone in your profession that works very hard, spends a lot of time doing what you do, to staying on top of all the legislation from a local and global point of view, to staying on top of the markets, to staying on top of asset allocation, to staying on top of all of these risk management things that I've mentioned now. That's why if you have the right partner, that stress and anxiety goes away, because there's somebody there that is watching it, that will keep an eye on it, that will make sure that we are moving towards that goal, and that can realign when things change.
I love that. And I think we've spoken extensively about having a team of people around us to assist us in our physical activities. But I like the idea of having a financial coach as well, because we can't all know everything. And just to have somebody in your corner that's going to advise on these matters that not all of us know about, I think is enormously comforting.
And that's exactly what it is. It becomes a financial coach.
Yes.
It's more than anything else. And it's somebody that's focused on those 6 components of financial planning. And often, even the best financial planners don't cover all 6 components in depth. They have other experts that they rely on to fill certain gaps where they fall short.
Brilliant. So it's making your team bigger. It's good.
100%.
It's good. We like it. I think it's absolutely vital for us to take away life stressors, because from a mental health perspective, yes, we can keep our bodies in as much physical health as possible. We can do all we can to decrease anxiety and depression. But if we still have big life stresses, then all those things are not going to be as effective as if we didn't have those life stresses. And some of those stresses we can do things about, like our financial stresses. Some of them we can't. And that's where it's important to build resilience through exercise, through interpersonal relationships. But as you say, if we can take away those stresses that we can do something about, then that's brilliant.
100%. And maybe some other things that you can do that will immediately make a big impact is, and this is drawing from The Psychology of Money, which is a book that I also recommend everybody reads, that setting clear goals helps you to stop the goalposts from moving. And so if you know what you're working towards, then it doesn't all the time move. So if you haven't really applied your mind to it and you have those goals, then you look at everybody else, you look at the Joneses, you look what they're doing, and that adds to anxiety and stress and pressure, because you're constantly trying to live up to other people's lifestyle. And if you have a clear goal of where you want to move to, that anxiety also goes away. It also simple things to decide for yourself, things like enough is also good enough. is also enough is also a good goal to have. And you know, that also, the moment that the penny hits home as far as that's concerned, also makes you feel better. And then I think lastly, sort of the most important is no matter what, when it comes to money, don't sacrifice friendship, family, relationships, or any of those type of things. You know, when it comes to money, make decisions that improve those things and not to damage those things, because you know, that will obviously also lead to really poor mental health outcomes.
And I just want to loop back to something else you said during the conversation. You said that when you were talking about debt management, and that you get the debt under control, and then with your next paycheck you go and get your next dopamine fix. And I think really, obviously some spending is mandatory, that we have to spend money to live. But some spending is just on a whim and just to make ourselves feel good. And that's the spending that we need to target.
100%. I mean, there's necessities that you can't move away from. So we all have those fixed responsibilities. And but then there are the nice to haves. And the nice to haves are also important. But it's important to manage those nice to haves, because it's often those nice to haves that spiral out of control and put you under pressure, because it's also usually part of your variable spend and not part of your fixed spend. So when you look at your budget consists of those big scary debit orders that go off every month, and those are quite stable and consistent, and so it's easy to budget for them. Then your variable spend consists of musts, your groceries, your food, you know, like school clothing and those type of things. I mean, you need those things, you can't move away from them. But then there are also the wants that are equally important. And I actually believe, and I don't want to get into too much detail, that you should have a budget allocated to those wants, so that you know how much you can spend on those wants without going overboard. Because if you never get any of the wants, you become quite grumpy. And so I'm not saying by any means that you know, nobody wants to live a life where you can't spoil yourself with those wants from time to time. But when you do, make sure that you know that you are planning for it. You know what it costs, what impact it has on your budget. And if you have a good budget, you will know. If you don't have a budget, you have no clue, and you are actually just spending blind.
Which is dangerous, and that's the trap that many of us fall into.
100%.
This has been brilliant.
Thanks,
Thank you so much for shedding light on this very important topic that I have never thought about before. So thank you.
No, thank you, Gwen, and thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit on this. And like I mean, I'm incredibly passionate about being healthy, and about eating well, and about being out there in the mountain, exercising. But it's difficult for me to think of that conversation and how that leads to mental wellness if you don't also think of financial fitness as part of that package.
Yes.
to make you a happy person. Yes. That's what you all want to be.
Enjoy life.
Correct.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to see more of these, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow us on social medias. Thank you so much, everyone. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.